Before we start the video, a large thank you to Gimarco, Alex, Brody, and Raul for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And a large thank you to Mike Harden Games for their immense support of this channel on Patreon. Alright guys, today we're going to start our leveling up system. So, I'm going to go to the player here now and open up the stats because I don't think we have any levels, besides the health, stamina, and the focus level. So, I'm going to go to the deriving class, the character stats manager here now, and I'm going to make a header. I'm going to start by saying levels, and then I'm just going to do the traditional 8 Dark Souls 1 levels. So I believe it's 8. So I'm going to start also by dragging down these actual levels down here. Remember, the max stamina is calculated with by a formula that takes in the stamina level, much like the health and the focus points. So the levels are different than the actual max health, max stamina, current health, current stamina, etc. So then I'm going to start by making a public int a strength level. I'm just going to initialize all these at 10. I'll make another int for the dexterity level, and I'm going to make the faith and intelligence level, and then I will make a poise level as well. So I have some UI icons for you guys that you guys can use. I will link in the description below. I've just made them myself very quickly in Photoshop. They're nothing too special. They're just for prototyping purposes. Now that I have all of that done here, now I'm just going to also, that's fine there, go out to the player UI game object. And I'm going to make an empty game object for the level up screen. So the screen will be toggled on and off when you actually encounter an area that lets you turn on level up. So I'm just going to call it level up window. And I'm going to hit Alt and hit this so it sizes this size of the UI. I'm then going to add an empty game object. I'm just going to call this left panel in case you want to add a right panel for future information on the stats or etc, or a middle panel. And I'm going to make it 640 by 1080. So it's the size of the screen, at least it should be. I don't think our UI is set to 1920 by 1080, so we're going to do that as well. We'll make it scale with the screen size. So if I go to the UI here now, I think it's on Canvas. Yeah, it must be under Canvas Scaler. Open that up and scale with screen size and make the reference resolution 1920 by 1080. Or make it whatever you want. That's what I'm going to set mine to. That looks good. That might potentially make a few things look strange in the future, but if it does, we'll fix them as they pop up. Just then I'm going to make my left window, as I said before, 640 by 1080, and that will be 1/3 of the screen. I'm going to drag it far over here to the left. I'm then going to add another empty an image, and I'm just going to make this image, again, the size of this by hitting Alt and clicking on that transform, and then I'm going to make it all black. I'm going to make it a little bit faded out, just so you can see through it kind of a little. And now we're actually going to start placing our information about our player's levels. So I'm going to call this background, and then I'm going to make an empty game object in here. I'm going to call this current levels. I'm going to make this, hit Alt, make it the size of the whole transform again. And then I'm going to make another game object in here. Actually, we'll do an image or text. And I'm going to change the text to white so I can see it. Going to make the font size 26. Might change that. We'll see. We'll kind of judge as we go. I'm going to set it to middle. Again, this stuff is just really aesthetics. What I'm doing right now isn't detrimental to the system itself, but I find this just looks a bit neater. And I'm going to say player level, and I'm going to put a 1 here for now. So we're going to do this by having a current level and a projected level, okay? So when you're leveling up, let's just add an image in here. This will be the stat icon. You have your current level, what you are, and then as you're choosing your stats, when you're bumping them up, you get a projected level. And via your projected level, you calculate how much souls it's going to cost to level up, and it adds all your projected levels together to give you your projected total level. So your total level is just like your soul level. I'm actually going to just put player level here and take away the 1 because I'm going to give the projected and current levels their own text fields so we can edit them via script easier. So I'll call this, let's put a 0 here for now because this will be calculated from the player stats manager. And we can call this current level and projected level. I'm going to change the font size to 32, change that to white. Just again, going to make it semi-appealing to me. So we'll say current level, size it up, there we go. That looks like it's not in the right spot, so we'll try the middle and the middle again. That looks fine. Okay, and we can just duplicate that really because it's going to want the projected level to kind of look exactly the same. For aesthetic purposes, I find it's nicer. And just pull that over to the right. Just like even a bit further, honestly. Yeah, right over there. That's fine. Now, I'm actually going to go back here and add poise because I just noticed I don't have it. So public int poise level. and that's fine. I'm going to save that now. And then I'm going to go over here, and I dragged in all these icons. I'm going to highlight them all and make sure I set them to 2D sprites and UI. And again, you guys can get these in the description, and feel free to use them whenever you want. All right, and I'm also going to go ahead and start putting some of these on the stats. So this one used to the player level. It's just the icon of a character, its head. And I'm going to duplicate this field, and I'm actually going to call this souls and souls required. And I'm going to basically just hide the icon. You can put them there if you want, but this is just going to show how many souls you have and how much is required for you to level up, depending on how many levels you're trying to level up at once. So I'm just going to say current souls, 0, and then projected souls or souls needed, whatever you prefer to call it. And we'll say this is current souls. And again, this will be the values that change. So say you need 500 souls level up and you have 10,000 souls. Your current souls will say 10,000, and then that 0 will change to 500 for the projected souls that you need to spend. And then your current souls, if you spend 500, will change to 9,500. So I'm going to throw in this arrow here too, just for, again, aesthetic purposes. I have this in the description too. You can pick this up too if you want. Just going to drag in or drop an image in here. Going to call this arrow, and this is just to indicate that like this arrow is pointing to what your stat will be after you change it versus what your stat currently is. And I'm just going to put that in between both the zeros here. And I'm going to drag in this arrow icon. I'm going to click preserve aspect ratio. I'm going to shrink it just a little bit. It's kind of overpowering. So put it like that. And that looks good. And if any of you guys have seen my solo project, this is kind of similar to how I did it. I added a little bit more polish to it, obviously, because this is just prototype material. But I'm going for the same vibe and the same kind of look. Okay, so now that that's done, we have our total level and our souls. We can actually make our stats now because the player total level is not really a stat. So I'm going to create an empty game object. Going to call this stats or just player stats. Going to hit Alt and change the transform to I'm going to change this to player soul level so it's very clear in indication. Hit Alt, click down here so it takes the size of the game object itself, and I'm going to drop it down right below current souls and player level and take it up from a bit from the bottom. This is, again, just preference for aesthetic. Going to add a vertical layout group, which will keep everything that I drop in here vertically aligned. Copy, going to paste this under here as a child because everything here now is going to be pretty much the same. So I can change this to strength level. Then I change the text from player level to strength level, and I can change the icon to the strength icon, which is, where do I have that? It's just a flexing icon. There we go. Now you're going to see that the 0 there is a bit off the side. We're going to change the buffer on this vertical layout group because it's kind of making the image go over the edge there. So I am going to come over here to the padding and basically add some to the right. 25, no, 100, even a bit more than that, honestly. Let's try 125. That's too much. 115 maybe. There we go, perfect. And now just duplicate these stats and do the exact same thing for all of the stats. Fill in their icons, change the text on the screen, and align them how you want. The cool thing about a vertical layout group too is if I, for example, drag dexterity level above strength level in the hierarchy, it will actually lay out above strength level on the screen, so it changes in which order they are dropped down, which is nice. Okay, so while I'm doing this, I'm just going to talk over it and explain what we're going to do because this is all just the exact same thing over and over again. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to have a slider on all of these levels, but we're going to make it invisible. So we're going to hide the graphic art. You can still interact with it, and we'll indicate when we're using the slider, we'll make it indicate that we're using it by highlighting the stat itself, because you can change which graphic you highlight when you're interacting with a button. So for example, if we're interacting with the strength level, we can make the slider change the color of the flexing icon to, say, a red or a blue, and we're going to do that. And we're going to basically create the slider's minimum value from our current stats, so we can't go below that, and the maximum value will be 99. But we're only going to allow the player to accept and change the stats and basically accept all the new slider values and write them to the stats manager if the player's souls are more than the required souls it costs. Otherwise, we won't allow the player to accept. We're also going to develop a formula to calculate how souls are going to change exponentially as you level up. I'll show you how to do just a very simple one to give you an idea where you want to, or what direction you want to head in. And I'm not going to touch on changing the colors of all these icons. Like in my solo project, I have it so if you go over the required amount of souls, all stats that you've changed turn red to indicate that you can't do it. This is very simple, and you just change the color of text and use if statements, and I feel like it will be not a waste of 40 minutes to do, but it's something that I'm sure if a lot of you, if you're on this episode now, episode 93, you're very much so more than capable of doing yourselves. So I will just give you the important stuff, the meat of it, where we will discuss basically formulas for equations for leveling up, and et cetera, and then we can use this system to set limitations on which weapons your characters can use, and if they don't meet the stat requirements, we can basically give them diminishing damage returns, as well as no poise, and all that fun stuff. So we're going to get into some more UI intensive stuff in the future, because I've been kind of putting it off, but now I think we'll get around to doing the important bits of it. So make a script on the level up game object called level up UI. Make sure you are using unityengine.ui, or we cannot access the text variable, which is what we're going to need, because that's how we write our text values from our character stats manager, using our integers from our stats using a toString. So, whoops, namespace is SG, not GT, getting my projects mixed up again. Now, we're going to make a bunch of headers, one for every single stats, one for your player total level, and one for the souls. So, we're going to want to make a public int for a current player level. And this is basically just going to take the int from our character stats and put it here. And then we want an int for our projected player level. This is basically just, again, we need the ints here as values because we're going to use them in an equation to determine a bunch of other stuff in the future. So you can take the ints directly from your character stats manager. I just like saving them as variables here as well. So the current player level is the level we currently are before we level up. So when we open up the UI at the level up screen, this is the level that will display what level we're at right now. So for players level 10, it will say level 10. Projected player level is the level we would be, say if we increase our strength by 2, then our projected level would now be 12 because we went up 2 levels. So if we accept it, the projected player level shows what we would be if we were to accept this level up screen and we had the souls to spend. Next is the current player level text. This is just the text field of the number of the current player level. That's what we're going to change on the UI to show our stats and such. And then we have the projected player level text. That's the other 0 to the right of the arrow to show what level you will be. Again, the text values themselves are just the values we're changing on the UI to match the integer values so you can see it on screen, because we can't display the integer values on screen without writing them to the text field. So I hope that's very clear. And that is all we need for the player level segment. Next, we're going to do the souls. So the souls is a bit more simplistic. All we really need is an integer value, for current souls text, and text for souls required to level up. 2 text fields, We can take the current souls from the player stat manager because they're not needed for the equation itself, not storing the variable locally, not to my knowledge. If that changes, I will change it. Again, preference, you can do this 10 million different ways. This is just how I'm doing it. Next, I'm going to make a header for health. I'm going to make a public slider variable for health slider. We didn't have the sliders, that's my bad. We're going to have to do that one by one now instead of just copying the game object. That is my bad, but we'll do it nonetheless. I'll go through it. Next, we're going to need a public text for current health level text, and then a text for projected health level text. So again, the same as the player levels, this is the zeros, the left 0 and the right 0. The current one being the left one, which will update automatically when you open the window, and the right one being it will go up if you try to increase your health level and you have the souls. Now, do this for every single stat. That will be your health, your stamina, your poise, your focus points, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's called attunement in Dark Souls 3. Your strength, your dexterity, your intelligence, and your faith. Again, this is all exactly the same, so I am going to speak over this while I'm typing out on the screen to explain further what we're going to do. So basically, we will have an invisible slider set up, and when you come into the UI, we will automatically make it so the top one selects, and then if you try to raise the slider by hitting left or right, you can't go backwards, obviously, because you can't go back to whatever level you start off. So if you open up the level up screen with 15 strength, you will not be able to set the slider below 15 on the strength stat. You can raise it all you want. If you go past a number, which won't allow you to spend the souls level up, let's say, for example, you have the souls to get to level 18, but you try putting it up to 25. We'll make it so you will not be able to accept the level up screen, and closing it will reset all of your stats to the stats that they were when you entered the screen. We're not actually changing your stats unless you click the accept button. So the projected stats are just basically what the name suggests. It's what you have the potential to be if you have the souls to enable this. Now, as far as how we're going to do the soul cost of leveling up, I'll give you a few simple examples for math formulas that will kind of give you a general idea of where you want to go. Dark Souls 3 uses a very strange one. I had a friend of mine break it down for me. He's into like data science. He found it kind of fun. It's really weird. You can make something a lot more simplistic. I think Dark Souls maybe might have did it for balancing reasons, because there's weird plateaus between certain numbers themselves. I believe like for example, between 27 and 29 in one stat, there's more diminishing returns than between 30 and 32. That's just two arbitrary numbers, but I know like certain returns are more valuable later in some stats, and sometimes they're more valuable earlier. Again, I would assume this is for balancing purposes, but if you can do this with a simplistic system and try to balance from the get-go, this shouldn't be a problem for you. There are some people too who have really shown off the data behind Dark Souls stats. There's not a lot of resource material on it, but there is some on the Wikipedia. Anyway, I digress. Now that that's all done, I'm going to see here if we still have, we still have time. We're almost at 20 minutes. We're going to basically add these sliders into the UI as well and plug all those in. So by the end of this video, hopefully, the entirety of the UI will be set up for this. And then in the next video, we can actually start scripting. So I'm going to save this. And this is still name strength. This should be poise slider. That's why it's giving me an error. All right, let's drop back in here now. And I'm going to start by going to the first stat. Don't go to the player level because we can't level it up ourselves. That changes automatically. So start by going to your health level. I need to change the names on this too. I still have health here twice. That should be stamina and this should be poise. So start by going to your health level. And what you want to do is basically create a slider inside of it. And I'll show you what I mean by being able to change the graphic of the level itself. So, let's actually drag in these variables first. So make sure you don't accidentally drag in for example, the current level of the health for the current level of the stamina, because then when you go to your level up screen and you start leveling stuff up and other stats start going up or changing, you're going to be very confused. I did that one time without even realizing it. It might be a good idea if you want to change, for example, the current level and projected level for the health to health current level, health current projected level, and then stamina current level, stamina projected level. I didn't do that right here, and I'm not going to. I'm going to take my time, but I'm sure, as you guys know, in this series, I have made a few mistakes, especially with dragging things into the inspector. So if you do see me make a mistake, could one of you kindly point it out in the video, because I probably don't notice. When I do this kind of thing, I'm kind of like in a tunnel vision mode. All right, there we go. So that looks good. I know a lot of this too is a more tedious and repetitive process, but honestly with UI, that is the nature of the beast. There's a lot of setup required and a lot of things that you just have to kind of play around with until it looks right. And a lot of you guys don't see this in this video, but I prototype a lot of the stuff. I'm going to change that because the order is actually faith and intelligence. So I want to make the UI match the order of the script. Anyway, a lot of stuff I do off camera, I prototype and I spend some time with it. So that's why I come into the videos and I feel like they're a bit more streamlined, is because I prepare a little prototype beforehand and practice with that. So I don't waste so much time doing these kinds of things, Now let's go into the health level and add a slider component. And it doesn't matter where it is. It really doesn't. I'm just, for my mild OCD, I might drag it to the next to the arrow so it's not overlaying the health itself. But it doesn't matter because we're hiding. Just make sure you hide all these images. So uncheck the image check mark here. So basically that makes it so this thing is still active in the scene, still selectable, still interactable, but it has no graphic. And just change the name to stat slider. And basically where you see the target graphic, let's change this to whole numbers too if it's not there. And you can drag in stat icon on target graphic and then make it the normal color, white, and then change the highlighted color and select the color to the color you want. So now if I were to select this slider, the health icon itself, that's why I made it white in the UI tool, will turn red. So I am going to reset the transform here. It looks like I still have a graphic I've not hidden, so I'm going to find that. I'm just going to put it right here. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. And then basically, I'm going to copy this stat slider and I'm going to paste it under all of the stats once I'm done playing around with it. Again, the size and stuff just doesn't matter. I'm just trying to tailor this to my mild tweakiness with UI, and I'm just going to put it over here. So I will copy this now and do the same thing, paste it under every single stat. You can reset the transform. I'm just going to haul over and place it on the dead center of the arrow over here, so it's kind of out of the way. It's just nice too if I go to edit the UI, all these invisible borders aren't overlapping, so I know where stuff is. And I'm just going to paste this here as well, reset the transform, drag this over here. Don't forget too, if you want to, be sure you're changing your target graphic to the graphic of the stat icon itself, because if you're copying and pasting this like I did, it's going to basically keep the health icons graphic. Ideally, I should have made this right away, and we should have copied and pasted it, so it would have basically done all the work itself, but I forgot to add the slider. That is my bad. Can reset that, drag that over there. There we go. Okay, so now I'm just going to go up, and on every stat slider, just going to drag in, I already done the health, I'm just going to drag in the stat icon on top of it up here. Just going to make sure that, yeah, that's okay. Excellent. Drag that in there. And guys, for this video, that's pretty much it. I'm going to basically narrate now while I'm doing the last of this, just dragging these in. So in the next video, the goal is to basically create an equation to allow us to spend souls to level up. When we hit the confirm button, which I'll add in the next video, we will change all of our stats to the new stats. And we're going to make it so if we hit the confirm button and we don't have the required souls, it won't allow us to do so. And then we want to make sure that it resets nicely when we leave. So basically, if we level up a bunch and cancel it and we can't do it, we're going to reset all our projected levels. We're going to make sure the current levels go back to the player level, etc., etc. We'll spend our time with it and make it real nice. And hopefully after that, we can start doing weapon stats and stat requirements. So if you try to use a weapon without the required stats, you will use it ineffectively. And I know there's a rule in DS3. I'm not sure if it's in DS1, but if you try to two-hand a weapon, I think you can have half of the level, and then you can two-hand it and use it effectively. I can't remember if it's half or 66% of the stat requirement, but anyway, we'll do that too. I had that done in my solo project already, so I know the process of going about it. Oh, and lastly, before I do go, there's a thing in Dark Souls called input queues or action queues, okay? And an action queue basically is if I hit the light attack button when I'm partway through a light attack, for about half a second to 0.75 seconds, it will remember the action I attempted to make. And if I'm allowed to make an action at some point in that 0.75 seconds, it'll perform the action for me. That's why in Dark Souls, when you combo, it feels very smooth. It's almost like it remembers it for you for a second. And when you roll, if you tap the roll button in the last second of an attack, as soon as you're done the attack, it will roll away for you. Dark Souls 3 has this. It makes the combat a bit faster. It feels very fluid. And it's a tad more forgiving, but I find it speeds up the flow of combat. It feels very nice. I haven't done my solo project. If you guys would like to see it in this series, please comment below. Now I'm going to do the leveling up system in the next video. Probably going to do stat requirements after that. But then if you guys want to see that, we'll get around to doing that. All right, guys, thank you for watching. It has been a pleasure. Be sure to drop a like and leave a comment. It does genuinely appease the YouTube algorithm gods, and it helps my series out so much. To the lot of you that are constantly supporting me all the time, I appreciate it so much. And if you feel like a super champion, check out my Patreon below. I will see you guys in the next video.